All right. So we continue on in our sermon series on Psalms. And like I told you guys last week, I love Psalms because they're real people in real life dealing with a real God. And some of the Psalms are written from a really personal perspective, and some are written both from a personal as well as a national the nation of Israel perspective. This psalm today is one that we believe was written by David to commemorate the initial bringing of the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. And so this is part of the psalm will deal with that act of celebration. So let's think about that just for a second. If this psalm does indeed commemorate the bringing of God's presence to be with the people of Israel in Jerusalem, how important do we think that the beliefs expressed here would have been to those people? If the belief is that where God resides, God will protect, and God is now residing in Jerusalem, how important would this day of commemoration be, the theology behind it? Very? Very? May it have given them confidence when they remembered it, that regardless of what was happening in their lives, they would have remembered that God was with them? Okay. We'll get there. Not probably. But I want to begin by talking about how we tend to act based upon our belief. And I'm going to give us kind of a little bit of a silly example to begin with. And then I want us to think about perhaps, and we're not going to name every way, but perhaps think individually how you may, how your belief may impact your action. Okay? So Maxwell has made it a habit of sneaking food or treats from our cabinets and our garage. And the way he does this is he, as Kelsey's working with her back towards the dining room, okay, so if you walk into our house currently, right here is Kelsey's office. This is where she works. This is the living room. Our dining room is here, and the kitchen's here, and the hallway comes down this way. What Maxwell will do is he will go, when he gets to the corner of the wall, just past the stairs, he will hit the floor. And he will begin to crawl behind the table. I'm not going to get down because y'all don't want to see me have to try to get back up. But he will crawl behind the table, behind all the chairs, thinking, believing that nobody can see him. I'm sneaking right out. But the truth of the matter is that he's not that sneaky. He's kind of loud. Just because we can't see him the entire way doesn't mean we can't hear him and know when he's up to. He will sneak, do all this work to sneak and to get the treats that he wants, and he'll actually stay in the garage, regardless of how hot it is, in order to sneak a treat. Now, my son is pretty slight, but I do want to just let you know that we make every effort and attempt to feed him. And we're not hiding food from him. He's not deprived, but he will go out there and sneak food because he believes that we will not give to him the treat that he wants. His sneaking is dictated by his belief. Our lives, the way that we live, the choices that we make, are dictated by our beliefs that we hold on a daily basis. Those beliefs oftentimes betray, or those actions oftentimes betray a belief that really isn't scriptural. At least I know that I do things in my life to get around maybe what God says, and so that I can serve myself. Our belief impacts our action. And this psalm here, the belief that is laid out in this psalm here is fundamental to who we should understand God to be and who we should understand ourselves to be in relationship to him. Okay? So this psalm is broken up into 3 different chunks. We've got verses 1 and 2, and it uses the image of creation. And then we have verses 3 through 6, which tells of the worshiper approaching the mountain of God. And then we have verses 7 through 10, which depicts the God who is king because of his victories in battle. Right? The mighty king. Now, the way we're going to work through this is I'm going to break from my normal pattern, and we're going to look at section 1 first, and then we're going to look at section 3 first, and then we'll come back to section 2. Okay? So the first thing that we're going to look at is section 1, which is verses 1 through 2, which says, which says, the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, the world and those who dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Okay, so there is this fundamental belief that everything, that everyone that exists is God's. He is over it all belongs to him. And the reason that is given is that he has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the rivers. Now this is nice, right? So for us, in our modern mindset, we're thinking, okay, so everything belongs to God because he made it all. And that's all really well and good, right? That's a good statement. But the truth of the matter is it actually goes deeper than that. Because the Canaanite religion believed that the sea, Yam, and the river, Nahor, were the sources of all chaos in the world. And so when it says that God established the earth on the sources of chaos, it means that God has destroyed the sources of chaos in the world. God has vanquished the sources of chaos in the world. And so not only does everything belong to God, but that God is the most powerful God. And indeed, God is not a God of chaos, but of order. Do we see how this might be important? When you look at the world around you and it looks like chaos may be reigning, we come back to scriptures like this and we understand that God has indeed destroyed the forces of chaos, or beaten the forces of chaos. Even though they continue to exist, they will not have final answer or sway over God's purposes amongst the people of God. Chaos is not the final answer. Chaos is not the source of what the foundations of the world were based on. God, who created out of love and order, is. And so when we think about this, we think about we are a people who need not fear the chaotic things that we see in life, because God is over it. And then section 3. So hold on to that. Section 3 says this. Section 3 says this. Lift up your heads, O gates, and be lifted up, O ancient doors, that the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle. Lift up your heads, O gates, and lift them up, O ancient doors, so the King of glory may come in. Who is this King of glory? The Lord of hosts. He is the King of glory. Now, in the ancient world, other gods, small g gods, were seen as king gods. Right? And these other small g gods, such as Baal, were the gods of the other people in the land. And what we have here is we have the author, the psalmist, reflecting and saying, the other god, Baal, who is one of but many gods, may call himself king. But the truth of the matter is, our God reigns. And not only does our God reign, but as you read through this text, what it is trying to convey to us is that the Lord, as they took the presence of God with them into battle and they brought him home, God was with them in the midst of the struggles, in the midst of the fights, in the midst of their hardships. And so God, this God who is with us, who has fought for us, this is the God. This is the God whom we lift up and worship. This is the God who comes and dwells amongst us. This is the God. Baal is but one name for some other source or force that may consider itself, or others may have considered it to be God. But here's the thing, the only true God is the true God of Israel. The only true God is the one who came and walked amongst us, suffered like us, and died for us. This is the only true God. And so while others may come along and seek to say, I can rule, or I should rule, or serve me, or bow down to me, or be fearful of me, we know that God is the only God, the God who resided with his people and went with his people, Israel, into battle. This is the only God we should fear. This is the only King. And so in the midst of creation, God has vanquished the powers of chaos. In the midst of Israel's struggle with the nations around that may worship other gods that might come to wage war, their God is the one who has brought about victory. We see God is a God who subjugates all of those other forces which are not him, of him. And so then we go back to section 3. Section 2. And now it's speaking to a worshiper as they're going to worship in the holy place, on the holy place. Who shall ascend the hill of the Lord? Who shall go into the presence of God? Who shall go and worship God? And who shall stand in his holy place? He who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false and does not swear deceitfully, he will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. And so what you have here is you have a group of worshipers who would come and stand before a priest, and they would say, who can worship the God? Who can worship God? Who can ascend the hill? Who shall stand in the holy place? And the answer is he who has clean hands and a pure heart, who does not lift up his soul to what is false and does not swear deceitfully. He will receive blessing from the Lord and righteousness from the God of his salvation. Such is the generation of those who seek him, who seek the face of the God of Jacob. So when we pull back and we look at this and we say, well, there are the forces that are chaotic in the world around us, these false forces, and there are things that may claim to be able to rule over you, people, beliefs, these things. The ones who can come before the Lord is the one who lifts himself, who places himself only to the Lord. He who has only raised his mind in adoration and worship to God can ascend the hill. He's not bound to the forces of chaos in his own heart and mind, and he's not bound to the might and threats and fears of the others. In his mind, he has given himself only and totally over to God. I think that this psalm is important because it conveys how belief influences practice. So if we believe that God has defeated, has vanquished the forces of chaos, or has put to death and sin on the cross, has released us from fear. And if we believe that God is the only true King, that in the midst of the swirling chaos, in the midst of the voices who would claim to be authority, we can give ourselves totally and fully up to Him. This is a psalm which reminds us that there is no other force in heaven above or on earth or in the places below that should have our hearts, our minds, our hands, our allegiance but the God of Scripture. So we should not allow ourselves to walk in fear. We should not allow ourselves to walk in hate. We should not allow ourselves to walk in unfaithfulness or untruthfulness, but choose to reside only in the loving embrace of the God who has come to be with us. Amen.
Amen. this last song you'll want to stand up for.
I was just about to say this is a song of worship and pure joy. Okay, let's see. Okay. And I always want to rush it, so I'm going to slow myself down a little bit. For the light of your love is shining in the midst of the dark is shining. Jesus, light of the world, shine on us, set us free by the truth in your grace. Shine on me, shine on me, shine, Jesus, shine, fill this land with waters flowing, place Spirit blaze, set our hearts on fire. Overflow, flood the nations with grace and mercy, send forth your word, Lord, and let there be love. Lord, I come to your awesome presence, from shadows into your radiance. By the light I enter your brightness, search me, try me, to all your darkness. Shine on me, shine on me, shine, Jesus, shine, fill this land with waters flowing, place Spirit blaze, set our hearts on fire. Overflow, flood the nations with grace and mercy, send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light. Early days underneath your likeness, so our faces display your likeness, ever changing from glory to glory. Clearer and clearer lies another story. Shine on me, shine on me, shine, Jesus, shine, fill this land with waters flowing, place Spirit blaze, set our hearts on fire. Overflow, flood the nations with grace and mercy, send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light. One more time on that chorus, please. Shine, Jesus, shine, fill this land with waters flowing, place Spirit blaze, set our hearts on fire. Overflow, flood the nations with grace and mercy, send forth your word, Lord, and let there be light.
Amen.
Go now in the knowledge and grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, knowing that we serve a God who has overcome. Let nothing overcome us, that he is already victorious over. Amen.
Amen. Amen.